straw. It was a real, turn the page, nice barn. I was sure I'd get a good night's sleep, but just as he was leaving, he said there was one thing he figured I should know about. So he took me over to a pile of straw and pushed it out of the way, revealing a trap door in the floor. He grabbed the iron ring on the door and he pulled it up. There, I saw stairs heading down into the dark, and I followed the farmer down the stairs. Squeak, 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 squeak. And at the bottom of the stairs, there was this huge, large oak door with an iron bolt. The farmer pushed the bolt across and pulled the door open and walked through. Down a narrow, dark tunnel, we encountered another door, a steel door with a solid crossbar holding it closed. And the farmer lifted the crossbar and struggled to pull the door open. And we walked on. A few yards further on was a clear door made of bulletproof glass, 12 inches thick. It had a combination lock, and I watched as the farmer opened it. 12, 23, 7, click, 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 and then swung the door open. Swoosh. Past this door was a huge cage made of 3-inch round titanium bars. But that wasn't what caught my eye. What I saw was the huge monster inside the cage. It was gigantic, and it was covered with purple fur, and it was asleep. The farmer said, "This is what I needed to show you. This is my purple gorilla, and you've got to promise me, I mean really promise me, that you will not ever touch him." Well, I thought that was about the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard. Of course I'm not going to touch a gigantic purple gorilla. And so I promised him, and I thanked him for showing me his secret. Then we made our way back to the surface, and he closed the glass door, whoosh, and spun the lock, click, 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 click. And he closed the steel door, and lowered the crossbar, and he closed the oak door, and slid the bolt in place, clunk. We climbed the stairs, squeak, 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 and then dropped the trap door closed, thump. Then he spread the straw back over the trap door to hide it. Well, I was tired, so I laid out on my sleeping bag and I hit the hay. And the farmer went back to his house. But I just couldn't stop thinking about that purple gorilla. What a magnificent creature it was. I was wondering why the farmer didn't want me to touch it. It was asleep, so what harm would there be? What harm would there be? No harm, right? Yeah, no harm. Finally, my curiosity got the best of me, and I couldn't fight it any longer. And I jumped up and I went over and I brushed the straw from the trap door. I grabbed the iron ring on the door and I pulled it up. And I went down the stairs. Squeak, 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 squeak. And I pushed the bolt on the oak door open. Clunk. And I pulled the door open. Creak. And walked through. I raised the crossbar on the steel door and struggled to pull the door open. And I walked on. I came to the 12-inch thick bulletproof glass door and opened the combination lock, 12, 23, 7, click, 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 and I swung the door open. Swoosh. I walked up to the huge cage made of 3-inch round titanium bars, and I gazed at the purple gorilla that was still fast asleep. I reached out my hand and I softly touched his fur, and immediately he jumped up and let out a blood-curdling roar, turning and staring at me with the huge blood-red eyes. Needless to say, I tore out of there as fast as I could. When I got to the glass door, I could hear the gorilla tearing at the bars of the cage. I turned around in time to see him ripping and bending the bars and forcing his way through. I closed the glass door, whoosh, and I spun the lock, click, 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 and I ran on. And just as I heard closing the steel door, I heard the gorilla hit the glass door and it shattered into millions of shards of glass. I lowered the crossbar and I ran on. I slammed the oak door closed, and just as the steel door exploded off its hinges, I slid the bolt in place, clunk, and I scurried up the stairs, squeak, 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 and just as I was dropping the trap door, kerplump, the oak door disintegrated to slivers no bigger than a toothpick. I didn't bother spreading the straw over the trap door. Instead, I ran to my truck, hoping to escape, and as I opened the trunk door, straw and wood flew out of the door of the barn as the trap door was thrown aside from its hinges, and the gorilla leaped out into the barnyard. He saw me as I jumped into the truck, and I tried to get it started. I turned the key and couldn't see the gorilla running across the yard toward me, and the truck didn't start, and I tried again, and then this time the engine finally turned over and it came to life. And just as I was putting the truck in gear, the purple gorilla reached the door, grabbed the handle, ripped the door completely off the truck. I stomped on the gas, the engine raced, but nothing happened. The gorilla had lifted the truck off the ground, and I was helpless. As I sat there helplessly, that enormous purple gorilla reached into the cab, stretched out his giant hairy hand towards me, grabbed my arm and said, "Tiger it!"